Hi there, Will here, and today I'd like to take you through the process of making a couple of fashion shoots happen. The way I'm going to do this is I'm pretty much going to give you a complete overview of my process in its entirety. I'll glaze over some of the more boring elements because, I mean, they're pretty universal and not necessarily specific to my process. But technicalities and things like running strobes on cameras and some of the scanning elements, I'm going to get pretty in-depth with. So let's get to it, I suppose. The first part of the process for me is, depending on how I end up getting the job, whether it's someone reaching out to me or me reaching out to them, irrespective, I'm going to put together a reference pitch or a brief of some kind or a treatment, you know, I mean, it's all basically the same thing, and give an idea of what it is that I'd like to make and what my response would be to said brief or what I'd like to do for the people. And for me, the majority of the time, that's just basically a simple PDF with references that I like and bringing across the vision, because I'm learning more and more these days that I sort of live inside my own head visually, and that it's quite difficult for people to understand what it is that I see. And the best way to do it is to give them examples of things that already exist that are in line with what I'd like to make. Once the vision's been refined, it's mainly about making sure that I have the resources on hand to make pictures the way I want to make them. For the jewelry client in this video specifically, all that really meant was making sure that there was a monolight so that I could overpower the sun, and having a modifier on the monolight to make sure that the light wasn't too harsh, because there was a lot of portrait focused things, and fortunately I have those things on hand. The specific equipment I used on both of these shoots was my Mamiya RB67 with a variety of lenses. The fisheye 37mm I actually borrowed from my mate Chris at Skit Cameras, and was fun to use. And the strobe itself is a Godox AD400 Pro, which is not the greatest strobe in the world, I'm not going to lie. I mean, it's a fairly expensive thing, but compared to the Pro Photo that it's competing with, it is a lot less expensive and more powerful. It does have issues with syncing up sometimes and has a bit of a clunky user interface, but I mean, for like a third of the price of a Pro Photo strobe, it does the trick for me. In terms of the way it's set up, I use it wirelessly because PC sync cables tweak out all the time. I mean, I've used a lot of PC sync cables over the years, and basically they just break after like a single use because of the amount of stress they put through. Even the little mini adapter cable for the Godox trigger tweaks out quite often and needs to be replaced. But syncing it isn't really a difficult thing to do. You basically just plug in the PC sync adapter to the port on the trigger, which fortunately this Godox trigger has a little, I think it's like a 2.5mm or 3.5mm jack for the PC port to plug into. So at least there's only one PC element to mess around with. And then the trigger fires the flash, and it's as simple as that. I use a Sekonic L308B to meter the flash, and the rest of the work is basically done in my head because I've lit enough things over the years now on sets for people to know what the light is going to do, fortunately for me, without a digital preview. And neither of these shoots had any digital cameras involved at all, which is quite cool. I mean, it's not that I'm against it and that it can't be beneficial depending on the workflow, but in this case, that's the way things ended up going. the shoot's done, I'll develop the rolls and then make digital contact sheets by scanning them on a flatbed scanner. I tend to have pretty thorough disclaimers regarding the difference in color between a contact sheet and the final result, because they can be quite drastic. But when I've got the negatives in hand and the client's made selects, I scan the negs on my Hasselblad FlexTight 343. The reason I wait for selects before scanning them on my scanner is that the FlexTight is a pretty slow scanner for all its benefits. I mean, the highlight retention and tonality that you get out of a FlexTight scan is unsurpassable, but it takes forever, and I don't want to be scanning an entire roll, basically. So contact sheets get used for reference, selects get made, and those selects get scanned on the Imacom. With regards to retouching, I'm lucky enough to have spent a decent portion of my life working as a retoucher on film-specific things, so I've got a pretty good handle on making things look the way that I want them to look. With this jewelry stuff specifically, it was mainly portrait focused, so the only thing I really did was retouch like flyaway hairs and maybe a couple of skin blemishes. Try not to go too overboard to make it look heavily retouched. I just want things to look, nice. Probably the techiest thing I did in terms of retouching, which isn't very techy anyway, was just mask off the model in a couple of the pictures where it was meant to be completely flash filled with the background darker, because I wanted to amplify that effect a bit, and it worked out. The jewelry shoot though was mainly flash led in terms of lighting, since that was the brief, but I'd like to show you a more natural light look that I went for with a fashion thing I did later that same week. I got to do some fun double exposure stuff with the flash inside the greenhouse, and then once the light got a bit too harsh, we moved inside to shoot a lookbook. These actually ended up being some of my favorite pictures of the day, just because Nico really let me take my time in terms of setting up the light and making sure things looked right, and they turned out pretty nice. Here's a bit of a breakdown in terms of the lighting. I'll say in advance, this was not the world's most tricky lighting setup. I mean, it's a single light source balanced with the ambient light outside. But the way it was done, basically, is the reading for the light outside, midday, bright light, was 500 at f11, right? And the subject was standing on these marks over here, that were gaffer taped off to make sure they were standing in the same place, and the tripod was set up and locked off over here, okay? This light was set to about 500 f11 and a half, just so that the subject wouldn't completely blend into the background, because if there were even exposures it'd be a bit flat, so I wanted it to be not overpowering but basically the same exposure. So let's just say 500 f11 and a half, maybe even 3/4 of a stop, because you can adjust things very incrementally with the strobe. Anyway, and the rest of it really revolved around making sure that there weren't any reflections of the octobox in any of this glass. And because we weren't using a digital camera on the day, the way I did that was pre-firing the flash with the trigger on the camera and making sure through the viewfinder that no reflections showed up. It took some doing, and in doing so, the light, as you can see, had to be moved to pretty much the opposite of directly side on to the model, where the model was standing. But I counteracted that by having them turn slightly this way, and also the octobox by nature sort of throws light around, it bounces around the subject, and you don't get as bad a shadow from it being at an off angle, basically. You still need to refine it, but you get a lot more leeway. That's the benefit of the octobox. The downside, of course, being how much surface area there is to be reflected in the glass over here. And to be honest, the room itself did a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of the final look, because all those marvelous wood tones sort of just bounced the light around and had really nice, sort of very minor color casts brought into the frame. But it worked out, and I'm glad it did. A big part of being able to make things like this is the team one gets to work with on the day. So I just like to give big thanks to David, Nico, Courtney, Naomi, Michelle, Nicola, Isabella, and Jamie for all their hard work on these shoots. And of course the models, Olivia, Jenna, and Daniel. Anyway, that's about it, I suppose. It's not particularly often I get to do 2 shoots in a week, so this was a really good time. Thank you very much to Stiebeuel and Pina Jewels for allowing me to make things with them. And I hope you enjoyed the video and that you got something out of it. If you're anywhere in the world and need photos made, or know someone that might need photos made, feel free to tell them that you know a guy in sunny Cape Town. That'll come anywhere. A massive thank you, as always, to the people who support this channel on Buy Me a Coffee, and I'll see you in the very near future.